Welcome to this live webinar on finding connection amid COVID-19. My name is Sharon Hicks. I'm a licensed professional counselor and founder of Kintsukuroi Counseling in Mason, Ohio. I've made my life's work about helping individuals, couples, and families discover how to fully engage in connecting with the people and things that matter most to them. Tonight, I want to talk to you a little bit about what it looks like for us to understand our connection, understand our dance, the way we move towards and away from one another, how we engage, this engaging concept of engaging in a connecting conversation and what that looks like, especially in times when we're experiencing distress and times of uncertainty. And then about creating a sense of shared meaning from a place of a secure connection. I know every couple is in a unique place. Everyone watching is going to be coming from a different place with their own story. So we're going to really engage in a dialogue and a conversation about what that looks like. I'm glad you're here. As we think about understanding this dance of connection and disconnection, it's really important to make sense of what's going on around us and all of the variables. So at this current moment, every area of our lives has been impacted by COVID-19. I have taken the liberty of just listing some of those competing voices and variables in my own story. Perhaps for you, they would look differently, but in those areas, I've experienced this disruption in my own life with work and home and school and our daily living, and the way that we're engaging in relationship has been impacted by COVID. And each of us in our home and in my relationship, we're navigating life in a manner that has never been done like this before. So as we start today, I really want you to take some time, if you've got something to write with, to consider what does it look like, and perhaps even that drawing of yourselves. What are those externalizing factors that may be contributing to the way that you're experiencing connection or disconnection in your story right now? I want you to take some time to draw for yourself what that would look like. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to put that in there. This might be the first time today that you've had a chance to sit, even for this short period of time, and consider what those competing voices and variables may be in your story. For some of you, work may have been a place of refuge, a place where success was felt and gained. For others, that may be home. And for some, everything may have felt a little bit upside down even before COVID hit. With this rush of the silent tsunami here with this virus and with quarantines, it's really important for us to know that there's a lot of externalizing forces that are weighing in on this place within our own story, and how we can easily what I like to call spring leaks or cracks in already maybe tender places within us. So I really want to normalize that as we look at those externalizing things, and knowing that pressure cooker of what it feels like to have things being pressed on all sides that can cause cracks in our connection. Oftentimes when our felt sense of safety, this sense of I feel safe and seen and known, is threatened we can react and respond to those closest to us in ways that we never would maybe otherwise have experienced. When our life experiences a sense of upside downness, and we can just go into reacting instead of responding. And that really causes us to miss each other. So for some couples who already had navigated life and were in a really good place and figuring out all of the things and balancing life well, one curveball can set everything askew, right? So I think it's really important to know that the way that you're engaging in this here and now of your story, and the way your neighbors may be engaging in the here and now of their story, or your family, or those close to you, it's really important to tend to what's going on for you and to make sense of that. As our wires get crossed, we can end up missing each other at a time when we really need that support the most. We can get stuck in really negative patterns of disconnection that can really be disruptive to our relationship. So when left in not a time of crisis, sometimes those things we can call quirks, or those things that we do that we know, okay, I know it's not your favorite, way that I make a joke when it's time to be serious, or the way that I maybe need to have things organized, and maybe your spouse is more of a let's just go with the flow. Like under some other circumstances, those things maybe don't rub us the same way, or rub us the wrong way, I should say. But when we're experiencing distress, those reactions and responses can be polarized. And so we can lose each other and in those moments. So as we move through this time tonight, I want to talk about some key defining moments in relationships. And in our own stories, even moments when we have expressed maybe a high need. We have a need for support. If we've experienced a significant loss, those moments within our stories, a time of illness, times of trauma, uncertainty, these core moments in relationships when we are not met with a response of care and connection can really develop what we know as relationship ruptures or relationship traumas in our story. That reach and there's no response, or that need and there's no connect. I know personally my own story, it was at the birth of our first daughter, where I went into labor and delivery and my husband went into the emergency room because he got the flu. It was a time of great need for me and my story, and a time for him, a time of great need for his, and we missed each other in that. And it was an opportunity that I was feeling alone and I needed care and support, and he was experiencing an illness that I couldn't be there for. So sometimes those moments of need that we're not really able to be there for our partner are by no fault of, it's not for lack of wanting or even trying, but we can miss each other. And I think it's really important for us to have a vocabulary for what that looks like, as we know that this is a real opportunity for us to engage in a connecting conversation and to not let those core things become raw spots in our story. So if we think about this list of our needs and times of loss, trauma, illness, times of uncertainty, it looks like I pretty much created a list specific to this COVID-19 quarantines. I mean, those are some of the core areas where we're all dancing in this ambiguity right now. And I think it's really important as we are in this space of unknowns that we really are able to embrace and turn to those that we love and care about, and who are able to be there and feel equipped to support one another. So that's part of why I'm wanting to really share with you tonight some strategies to help you feel equipped, to help you learn some skills that maybe can easily slip away, especially when we're just trying to find a shared language. And so my hope is to be able to provide some of those tools for you tonight as we're able to speak to that core place of vulnerability in our own story and with our partners. So research shows that our ability to stay accessible, this concept of accessibility, responsiveness, and engagement, that this is really the secret sauce of connection. Our perception of whether or not our significant loved one is accessible to us. Are you there? Will you be there for me? Will you come when I call? Do you see me? Do I matter? And how well we show up in that engagement are turning towards instead of turning away, And sometimes in those moments where maybe you're turning towards your partner, they may not be looking, they may be looking away, and so you look away, and then they're turning towards you, and we end up losing each other in this small way, and we realize that we're really not showing up in a way that the other can really feel that we're present and feel that we're with them. So as we think about accessibility, responsiveness, and engagement, I can tell you right now, you're doing it. Right now, in this moment today, with circling the wagons and being in lockdown under quarantines, this accessibility that you have to be present with one another, responsiveness, this responsiveness on a global stage, that we've responded in a way to be there for one another, to protect one another, to be engaged in what's happening around us. We're doing that as a global society. We're doing that in our communities. We're doing that in our homes. And my hope is that you're also finding ways to do that with each other. And so if we can celebrate the gift of that accessibility, responsiveness, engagement, that you're doing these hard things together, turn and give each other a high five, or give yourself a high five. I'll give you an air five here from my chair, that we can do hard things together, and having a language to know why it feels like we're being present in this space, I think is really helpful. So I'm going to break it down even more, and let's think about some more practical ways in some core areas that maybe you're experiencing a little bit of tension. And I like to say this dissonance, relational dissonance, is specific to this time of COVID. So let's engage in a conversation about how we can not just survive, but thrive. And one of the very first core pieces of that is to just take a breath and to slow down and tune in to the needs of each other. Tune in to what's going on for you with gracious understanding and with compassion. For some couples, you may not even be in quarantine together. You may be in quarantine in two totally different places, and that poses its own set of challenges. Every couple is in a unique space with your own unique story. And so as we're walking through these strategies, I really want you to consider, what is it that I'm needing? What is it that my spouse or my partner is needing? How can we be present for one another and care for ourselves and for each other during this time with gracious understanding and compassion? So strategies, because we like to know, what can we do, right? So some ways that we can slow down is to take an assessment of some ways that we can easily miss one another. And the top of the list here is this routines. Under stress, we can become really a lot more polarized in our natural responses. So if we are used to having a real structured routine in the way that things are, or a more flexible routine, we can become even more polarized in that. So as we are understanding the impact of working from home and schooling from home and all of the balls that we're trying to juggle together as couples, or from afar, which is even more complicated, or alone, it's really important to think about, what are those routines that we're needing? Sometimes a lack of structure can cause anxiety. Sometimes too much structure of wanting to mirror real life in the school or at work can be really anxiety inducing. So figuring out what is going to be a routine that we can really focus on being accessible and engaged and responsive with one another, specific to this time, specific to the right now of where we are, is going to be really important for surviving and thriving in this place. You can consider yourselves as being in this incubator, if you will, with kind of this opportunity for you to really practice that skill of accessibility, being present, and being able to respond to one another. Part of that routines is, how are we going to be together? Like, we're around each other so much, there can be this false sense of connection that comes with our presence, and yet we have to be really intentional with what that's going to look like. So this transition from home to work, or if we have a flexible work schedule, conference calls that maybe last for a certain unknown period of time, but this turning towards one another, Sometimes it has to be creative through a text message, just checking in, like, what does this look like for us to turn towards and away? Because that can really be a place where we experience distress as a couple. I think it's also really helpful to think about those family routines and rhythms. So instead of having like set structures and time, you know your specific needs of your family. There's lots of ways of doing lots of things and lots of good ways of doing lots of things. And the virtual world around us will tell us, especially now, what that could look like, what that should look like, expectations that we place on ourselves and others. And that can cause even more tension within our relationship. So thinking about, what does it look like for us? What does it look like for me? What is a routine that is going to help us connect and find space for one another? That's going to honor the here and now of our story and what those needs are. I think it's really important too with this coping strategies. Like I mentioned, our polarization can become even more different. So those things that you loved about your spouse or loved about your person under times of distress can also be those things that, oh my goodness, I just don't know that I can do this anymore, where we become really heightened. And a lot of times it's just from our own need to feel like we're needing to cope and regulate. Those things that we would laugh, and because we're so different, you know, opposites attract, can also be those things that really can rub us in those times of distress. So taking time to slow down and realizing and giving space and honoring one another in that, being able to come up with the language for like, oh, yes, this is where we are, having gracious understanding and compassion for each other is going to really help in that. I think this expression of fears and needs is really important because we are in a place where there is a vulnerability for us to be present, to be seen, to not really be able to go anywhere. As I mentioned, some of those fears that we have can come out sideways in kind of a protesting or movement, sharp movement towards the other in a way that can be not typical, or you may feel overwhelmed that we don't really know how to get unstuck from this. And if we really take time to slow down and identify what those needs are that we have and express in a form of, hey, I know that I'm seeing this, I'm noticing that, I know that that's working for you, I'm needing a little support here, this is what I need, and really turning towards one another and showing up in a way that's really fostering connection can be really healing and restorative. I think that being able to affirm and focus on some of those positive things gives us a sense of stable connection as well, so that we're not just pointing out all of the and then this, all the places that hurt can be the things that get our attention. So really focusing on connecting, focusing on how can we see and give that generous benefit of the doubt that they're really for us and with us, and we're figuring this out together in this space, in the here and now of our story. I think it's also important to think about, what does it look like for you to take time away? How are we going to connect and how are we going to disconnect, right? How are we going to check in with each other, but then also have opportunities to have time away, to have time to check in with a community of support around us, that we're not putting an undue weight or pressure on just the one that we're with to provide all of those needs. So sometimes that's external support systems through our friends and our community, but really setting intention for you to get that self-care that you need, to be present for one another, and really having opportunities to talk about, what does it look like for us to do this together. The other really fun thing to consider is, what does it look like for us as a couple to be resilient in the midst of this? What does it look like for us to show up and during a difficult time know that we can do hard things together? For some couples, this is a thriving strength. Like, we can do crisis management, we can walk alongside others, we can be present in the community by providing food for the food pantry or whatever that might look like. I know in my own home, we've been blessed by others who have dropped off masks that their family has made, or create a family that created a hopscotch thing on a sidewalk, right? Like, finding creative ways to create a resilient story? What does it look like for us to do something together and to really feel like we're forming not just a surviving this, but finding a way for us to really find some language to really thrive. I want to really address as well, I think I would be amiss to not talk about the fact that this is a perfect storm, if you will, for all couples, for all relationships, to really kind of take a temperature of where we are. And for some couples who maybe already were in distress or experiencing a relational tension, crisis like this pandemic, or being home and being contained, can sometimes exasperate that. And so I wanted to speak and spend a few minutes on that. What are some core ways that couples who already are in distress, who are now living and being and are in a place together, what are some ways that you can stabilize? Focus on stabilization and knowing that this isn't the time to solve all of the things, to understand and know that the goal would be to just not make things worse, to not exasperate the problems, to not focus on, especially when things are hurting, we're focusing on all of the things that are hurting. And so really kind of taking that pressure off, focusing on physical safety, emotional safety, maybe setting some boundaries in place, to be able to really stabilize, to know, hey, we're doing, this is the right here and now. Things were maybe already a little bit tense, but we don't need to make it even more intense by trying to solve for all of the things. So really just focusing on that and compartmentalize. We can know the elephant's in the room. Sometimes naming the elephant, like, this is hard, we need help here, but we don't have the resources, the time, the energy, the bandwidth to be able to fix this or figure this out. But let's both acknowledge that this is here. And when we can come back to it, we can make some space for it. Once the dust settles, it's going to be really important for us to tend to this. And so I think that compartmentalize isn't just pretending it's not there, but it's owning it and naming it, like, this is hard. Even just saying it can really take some of that weight off. Knowing that if you were in a crisis, we can always put this up on the shelf and bring it down later, not to hide it and dismiss it and brush it under the rug, but it's an opportunity for you to know, hey, here's some significant work that we want to do together, that we need to do. And it's okay that it's not right now, because now is not forever. Right now, there's the things that are mattering more. How do we stay safe? How do we stay secure? How do we take care of those that are here in our home, for those extended people outside of our home? How can we show up as a team, even if things are in a time of dissonance within our relationship? I think it's really important when you are getting into that negative cycle, like chronic or old patterns of, man, this is where we always go, this feels like it's never going to get better, it's always going to be this way, that you're able to know that that pain is also an expression of what's outside your control, that you cannot control right now. Those external forces we talked about at the beginning of this time are also pressing in. And so externalizing that problem, where you are not each other's problem, this way that you engage in this cycle of disconnection is really what's the problem here. And so that's the thing that we can put and compartmentalize, but we can show up and be present and see one another in this space without judgment, without feeling the need to fix it or correct it, because that's just going to spin things up faster. So let's slow it down, focus on stabilization, compartmentalize and name it. This is where we need to do some work, but it's okay, it's not right now. And then externalizing those other problems. What else is going on? There is a lot more at play here. Let's just take some time with gracious understanding to know that this isn't the time to solve for all of the things. And then I really wanted to speak to couples who maybe were already on the brink, maybe had made thoughts or trying to figure out where to go in their relationship, with clarity and confidence for a decision. Like, what does it look like for us to take whatever that next step is for us? And so I think this is a really opportunity for you to slow down, again, to focus on that stabilization. Thinking about this time of crisis isn't the time to make a decision that's going to impact you for the rest of your life, perhaps. For some of you that may be, but I just invite you to consider what slowing down and giving some space to focus on that time for humanity to come together and really be present and show up for one another in that way. And again, that there's a time that's something to come back to, and to be able to just not focus on the acuteness of that, but just breathe into this is where we are. And again, focus on safety. It's important that you're safe. It's important that you feel secure, that you have a community of support. And there's going to be some resources here that I'm going to share at the end where you're going to be able to have some access to that. So I want to talk about resilient, kind of what some ways that we can quickly or not so quickly think about resilience. This is a great opportunity to take an inventory. Like, where are we in our story? What are those core areas of vulnerabilities in our relationship that we know about ourselves because of our story, because of our journey, right? What's unique about us? But let's not put pressure on ourselves to try to fix or solve for all of the things. What does it look like to create that memory bank or an album of key images and stories within your own selves as you reminisce and think about the story of where you guys are? I think this rituals of connection, again, like I talked about the routines, those are going to look so different right now. Maybe going out was the way, like we always go out on a Friday night, or this is what we do to connect, right? That's going to be an opportunity for you to explore. How do we do rituals of connection when we're here together under the same roof? What does that look like for us? How can we get creative in those ways? How can we continue to turn towards one another in those everyday small ways that communicate that I see you, you matter, I'm going to come, I'm here, we're going to figure this out together. You're not alone to figure this out, where we're able to focus on what those places are. As we're checking in, as we're turning towards, as we're communicating what it is that we're needing, what it is that we maybe are fearing, we're bringing it into the space, making those things that maybe sometimes we do all alone. We might keep it inside and not say it, right? It's an opportunity for us to be fully present and to focus on being in that moment. Sometimes, especially if we're problem solvers, this is a really big problem that we might be trying to solve, right? This problem of relational dissonance, or trying to make sense and understand, how do I do this? How do I not get it wrong? How do I continue to try to show up when it feels like I'm just kind of always missing the mark? I think it's really important to just continue to focus on connecting. What are those connecting conversations? I see you, validating of one another's experience, knowing each other's story, knowing each other's inner world, making sense of the fear, making sense of what those needs are. And then we're able to kind of be more flexible in our responsiveness, more flexible with when I know that work isn't going to be 24/7, but in my mind, as I'm believing work is 24/7 and the phone rings again, it feels like, oh, I lost you again. Or the phone gets picked up and, oh man, the phone's always going to be on, right? So we can go to these places of fear, like I'm just afraid that I'm not going to get a chance in the schedule. Unless I book an appointment, you're not going to see me, right? That's a more vulnerable conversation that sometimes can come out really sideways out of anger and frustration. So really, our flexibility and our responsiveness comes from that place of really knowing and being known, being seen by our partner. And I had to put play in here. I love that I had a friend just check in on me today, and she asked me this very question. She's like, I want to make sure that you are getting a chance to play. And we need people in our lives like that, because I tend to be focusing, especially right now, focusing on showing up and being present for you all. And so I love that I had put this in the slideshow, and I was even reminded by my community of support. Where are you playing? Where are you connecting? What does that look like for us to find space to play? I know it's been beautiful to watch spring kind of come into being in this time where things have slowed down, and we're being present in that. And as we're able to continue to navigate this space, I think it's really fun to be able to say, what are going to be our COVID memories, right? There's what the world's showing us and what we're seeing on Facebook or what the news is portraying to us, but this is your own process, your own experience of right now, you living in this space, just you, just your sweetheart, just you and those that are under your roof. What is going to be those moments, those memory making moments for you in that space? And I think it would be really helpful to consider it to be this, hey, let's take time to slow down. Let's remember, we don't want to forget this. We don't want to forget the time that everything stood still and we had an opportunity to kind of reorient ourselves to where are we and how do we make space for the things that matter to us and for each other. I want to make sure I have a chance to answer any questions if you have any. So I don't know if you've had an opportunity. There's a Q&A box. I think you can put in anonymously if you don't want your name to pop up on our feed, but would love to get some questions if you have some. I've put in some check-in questions for you, and I will have a PDF with these as well, so you can kind of add them to your little list. There's a lot of really great apps. I know that, ways to connect, and Gottman has a card deck, like questions to check in. So these are just a few that I've pulled in here. So what are those 5 things on your bucket list? Like, how are we able to create and find ways to get to know one another more? Asking the hard questions, right? Like, what does it look like when I'm moving towards or away from you? What is that like for us when we get into conflict? Like slowing down and asking yourself, doing a self-assessment. What is it like to live with me? What is it like for me to be present in this? And not from a place of self-condemnation or judgment, but curiosity to know, hey, here's an opportunity for us to learn, to tune in, to be more accessible and responsive and engaged in that space. I think it's really also significant to think when we're feeling afraid and when that attachment panic is hit within us, we get so flooded. It's hard for us to respond. It's hard for us to be present in the moment. And so really focusing on connecting first, breathing, slowing down, physical presence. Those are the ways into I see you. You matter. I'll come when you call, even if we don't have words or we're so afraid of doing it wrong. Showing up in those ways, being present with another is really going to help find connection, even in this time when it feels like things feel really out of sorts. I have on support services slide here that I wanted to just pull up for you. I was sure to include mental health resources. I'd love to get you connected with local resources if additional support services may be helpful or beneficial for you. Also, there's the domestic abuse hotline, suicide hotline. NAMI has a lot of resources available right now as well. I've got some groups coming up in a marriage online virtual retreat that I'm putting on together. So I'm really excited to be able to provide services just to help couples realize you're not alone. It can feel really isolating, or we think, man, we're the only ones going through this. And when I start talking and I'm using this language of how we lose each other, how we find our way back, even that turning towards or away, I often think like we're on 2 different wavelengths, like we both want the same thing, but we can't access each other. It's a real, I kind of come in with that, yes, and we can have a map, we can make sense of it. We don't have to stay there. And so that's, I think, one of my things I want you to walk away from tonight is this sense of, here's an opportunity for us to connect. Here's an opportunity for us to get curious. Here's an opportunity for us to slow down, to make sense of where we are, to be gracious with one another, and to really have an opportunity to find connection. So I'm going to go here and see if we've got some Q&As. So I think I don't see any Q&As there, so I must have answered all the questions. I think as you continue to navigate life in the here and now, be gracious to yourselves. Be curious about what does it look like for us to be present in this moment. Take some time to consider what it is that you're needing, what you're learning. Go for a walk outside. I know sometimes those unexpected moments where we actually realize, hey, we can really create a new experience, a new sense of rhythm, a new opportunity to do life in a different way. There's not a going back to what was. This is a continue on, an invitation to something new and something beautiful, or a continuation to do some deeper healing, some deeper work in your own story as you navigate this, journey. So I'm honored to have had your attention. My hope is that you'll continue to find opportunities for those conversations for accessibility, responsiveness, and engagement with one another as you continue to navigate life in this here and now space. I wanted to show some resources. Again, the CDC, the World Health Organization, they've got stuff up online to help with mental health services and being able to get you the support and care that you need. I want to thank you for joining me and being here. It's an honor for you to have spent this time with me. If you're interested in future webinars or events, you can go to my website at Kintsukuroi Counseling, KINTSUKUROI counseling.com, or send me an email at info@kintsukuroicounseling.com. I want to end with this. Kintsukuroi is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with a golden lacquer. And the name of my practice came at a time when, in my own story, I had experienced a shattering and this sense of, oh man, life felt really upside down. And the beautiful gift that came in a Japanese friend who was walking alongside me in that season, who said this word, Kintsukuroi, this is Kintsukuroi, as the shards were being repaired and restored, as my heart experienced healing and wholeness relationally and personally in that space. It was this treasure from a hard place in a hard season. And I invite you, wherever you are in your story, wherever you are in the here and now, that you embrace this moment, that you know that now is not forever, that there is healing and wholeness and connection to be found as you continue to find connection in the here and now of your story. Be well, stay safe, and know you're not alone. Take care.